Nobody talks about what it actually cost John Dutton to become who he is. They talk about the land. They talk about the legacy. They throw around words like patriarch and protector, and they make it sound like a title someone handed him at birth. But that is not what happened. John Dutton did not inherit a throne. He inherited a war. And every single thing he has done across this entire story has been one man's attempt to fight that war without letting anyone see how close he has come to losing it. That is what I want to break down today. Not the battles. Not the politics. Not the neighbors and the developers and the government agencies all circling the Yellowstone like wolves waiting for the fence to drop. I want to talk about John Dutton himself, the man underneath the hat. Because if you have been watching this story and only tracking what John does, you have been missing the most important thing. What matters is why he does it. And that why is the most complicated, most painful, most human thing this entire show has ever put on screen. Stay with me until the very end. Because by the time we are done here, you're going to see John Dutton completely differently. Let's start where every honest conversation about John Dutton has to start, with what he lost before the story ever began. John Dutton did not become a hard man because hardness came naturally to him. He became a hard man because the world kept taking things from him, and he decided at some point that the only way to survive that was to stop leaving anything exposed that could be taken. His wife. Years of his life. The version of his family he probably imagined when his children were young. Gone. Not in dramatic fashion. Not in moments the show lingers on. In the quiet, accumulative way that real loss works. Slowly. Permanently. Without resolution. And here is what that does to a person. It does not make them cold. That is the easy interpretation, and it is the wrong one. It makes them controlled. There is a difference. Cold means you stopped caring. Controlled means you care so deeply about the things you still have left that you cannot afford to show it. Because the moment you show it, the moment you let anyone see exactly how much the land and the family and the name means to you, you have handed them a weapon. And John Dutton has been living with the knowledge of what people do with weapons for his entire adult life. Every decision John makes, every alliance, every threat, every impossible choice between what is right and what is necessary, it all runs through that same filter. What can I afford to lose, and what cannot be lost under any circumstances? That is the calculation John Dutton is running every single day. And it is exhausting in a way that nobody around him fully comprehends. Because they see the result of the calculation. They do not see the weight of it. Now think about his children. Because this is where John Dutton's arc becomes something genuinely tragic. He wanted to give them the ranch. That is the simple version. The real version is that he wanted to give them something permanent in a world that had taken everything impermanent from him. He wanted to hand them something that could not be grieved. Something that would outlast him the way nothing else in his life had. The land was not just a business decision or a family tradition. It was John Dutton's answer to mortality. His proof that something he loved could survive. But in trying to make his children the kind of people who could protect that land, he made them into people who are almost impossible to love back in the way he needed. He made Beth ruthless because he needed her to be a weapon. He made Case a warrior because the ranch required one. And Jamie, complicated, desperate, perpetually reaching Jamie, he made into something he could never quite forgive for not being the version he imagined. That is the heartbreak at the center of John Dutton's story. He built his children to survive after him. And in doing that, he created a distance between himself and all of them that neither side knows how to cross. They are exactly who he made them. And who he made them is not who he can be close to. John Dutton is surrounded by people who would die for him. And he is profoundly alone. Here is what people misread about John, and it matters enormously. They look at his violence, at the choices he makes that no moral framework would endorse, and they conclude that he is a villain wearing a protagonist's hat. But that reading misses the architecture of the character. John Dutton is not a man who chose corruption. He is a man who watched integrity lose over and over again and made a decision, a deliberate and agonizing decision, that he was not going to let the things he loved be casualties of his principles. That is a different thing entirely. A villain does not feel the cost of what he does. A villain sleeps. John Dutton does not sleep. You can see it in every scene where he is alone with the land, standing at the edge of something enormous and just looking at it. That is not peace. That is a man taking inventory, counting what is still there, reminding himself what all of it was for. He made a deal with a version of himself a long time ago. The deal was this: someone has to be willing to do what is necessary. Someone has to be the one who does not flinch when everything decent in him is screaming to. And if the cost of that is his own peace, his own reputation, his own standing in the kind of moral universe where good people prosper, then that is the cost. He accepted it. And accepting it did not make it lighter. It just made it bearable. That acceptance is the core of John Dutton's arc. And it is why every single confrontation he faces, every new threat to the ranch, every moment where the world comes at him again, lands differently on him than it would on anyone else. He is not surprised. He is not outraged. He is already at the bottom of the thing those emotions lead to. He got there years ago. Now he just fights from there. And that is exactly why where John Dutton ends up matters more than anything else the story has to say. Because a man who gave everything, who sacrificed his peace and his closeness with his children and his own comfort in the truth about himself, deserves a reckoning. Not punishment. Not vindication. A reckoning. A moment where all of it,